What if God looked at our world today and saw Sodom again? A city where pleasure became law, where children were corrupted, where justice did not exist. Sodom and Gomorrah were erased from history in the most brutal way possible. And this raises an uncomfortable question. To what point can perversion reach? To make God come down to earth and decide it is time to end everything. In this video, you will understand what really happened there, and why there is a possibility that this same story is repeating itself right before our eyes. Sodom and Gomorrah were two cities in the Jordan Plain, located in a fertile and rich region. They were seen as prosperous cities with great wealth and an apparently stable society. However, behind this facade, the people lived in extreme immorality and decadence. The inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah were immersed in inhuman practices. Those cities were more than immoral. They were a depraved spectacle. The streets were filled with unrestrained pleasures. Men demanded what they wanted by force. Women offered their own daughters for fun and status. Children were used in occult rituals, celebrated as sacred feasts. Pain became entertainment, and mercy a crime. Whoever tried to help others was stoned. The scriptures are clear in reporting that the men of the city were involved in acts of perversion with one another, and their wickedness had reached extreme limits. Imagine living in a society where no one cared about others, where greed was law and kindness a weakness. Now imagine that scenario 10 times worse. That was the reality of Sodom and Gomorrah. A city so impure and depraved that not even the children were considered innocent. Everyone there learned from an early age that wrong was right and right was wrong. But while most people only saw apparent riches, God looked at the hearts, and what he saw was unbearable. It was in this setting that God heard the cries of injustice and decided to intervene. But before acting, he wanted to give a chance for redemption. And this is where Abraham enters, a man known for his faith and justice, chosen to intercede for the cities. One day, while resting, he received the visit of 3 travelers. But these were not ordinary visitors. They were divine messengers. Abraham did not know, but among them was God himself. God could no longer ignore what was happening. He was fully aware of every sin committed, and the wickedness of those cities had reached a point of no return. In Genesis 18:20-21, God reveals his plans of destruction to Abraham. Abraham, knowing of the corruption of those cities, was distressed because his nephew Lot lived in Sodom, a righteous man in the midst of corruption. And then Abraham begins a negotiation with God. Abraham said to God, "What if there are 50 righteous in the city? Will you destroy it and not spare the 50 righteous who are there?" God answered with a clear promise, "If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake." And Abraham, trusting in God's mercy, continued to negotiate. "What if there are 45 righteous? Will you not destroy it because of the 45 righteous?" God answered again, "I will not destroy it if I find 45 righteous there." Seeing that God was merciful, Abraham insisted, more concerned with the possibility that the city had fewer righteous than expected. He continued, "What if there are 40 righteous?" And God replied, "I will not do it for the sake of 40. But Abraham persisted. "What if there are 30 righteous?" God answered, "I will not do it if I find 30 righteous there." Continuing his intercession, Abraham lowered the number even further. "What if there are 20 righteous?" God said, "I will not destroy them for the sake of 20. Finally, Abraham asked one last question, a final attempt to save the cities. "What if there are 10 righteous?" And God, in his mercy, replied, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." At the end of the negotiation, God promised not to destroy the city if at least 10 righteous were found. Abraham did everything he could, but deep down he knew that not even 10 righteous would be found there. Night fell over Sodom and Gomorrah, and 2 angels were sent to Sodom to confirm what God had said. Upon arriving, they found Lot, Abraham's nephew, sitting at the city gate. As they entered the gate, they were immediately noticed. The atmosphere of Sodom was heavy, filled with corruption and violence. Lot, who knew what was about to happen, saw the angels arriving and instinctively approached to protect them. He observed them seriously and knew he needed to act quickly. When he saw them, he immediately recognized them as divine messengers, and as an act of hospitality and protection, he ran to them. But that night, the true face of the city was revealed. Lot said to the angels, "Please come to the house of a servant, stay with me. Do not remain in the street overnight." The angels were reluctant to accept Lot's offer at first. They spoke mysteriously, as if aware of what was happening in the city. The first angel said, "We will spend the night in the square." Lot, with a desperate expression on his face, insisted, knowing the danger of staying in Sodom at night. Lot said, "No, please, I insist. If you stay in the square, you will be in great danger. Come with me, protect yourselves. You cannot stay here." The angels accepted Lot's proposal and entered his house. But the danger was not over. As expected, soon the door of Lot's house was surrounded by the men of the city. Men of all ages pounded furiously on the door, shouting in anger, "Where are the men who came into your house tonight? Bring them out to us so that we may know them." The word "know" in the language of that time was a softer way of saying sexual violence. These men did not want to merely see the visitors, they intended to commit acts of perversion against them. The city no longer recognized what was just or honorable. Lot, desperate, went out to confront them, desperately trying to protect the angels. He made an unthinkable offer, trying to appease the furious crowd. Lot said, "Please, my brothers, do not harm these men. They are my guests, my responsibility. I have 2 virgin daughters. I will give them to you. Do to them whatever you wish, but do not touch these men, for they are my guests." The people of Sodom, blinded by evil, replied in anger, "You are a foreigner, and now you want to judge us. We will treat you worse than them." Lot began to retreat back into his house, but the angels acted with divine authority. They pulled Lot inside, shut the door, and with a gesture of power, struck the men of the city with blindness. They groped in confusion, unable to find the door. The second angel then said to Lot, "Leave immediately with your family. The Lord will destroy this city, and no one else can be saved here." Lot, very afraid, hesitated. He could not believe what was happening. Even knowing that destruction was imminent, leaving everything they owned and knew paralyzed him. The angels pulled Lot and his daughters out of his house, but Lot's wife remained frozen, frightened by what was happening. She looked around, flames began to spread through the city, and destruction was imminent. The pressure and fear of seeing her city destroyed made her hesitate. The first angel said to Lot, "Get up! There is no time! Flee to the mountain, or you too will perish." Lot, in panic, did not want to leave his wife behind. He looked at her, feeling the pain of seeing her hesitate, but the angels were relentless. They knew destruction was inevitable and that no one should remain behind. Then the second angel said, "Flee now. There is no more time to look back." With one last desperate look, Lot and his daughters kept running. But as they ran to save their lives, something happened to Lot's wife. She could not resist the impulse to look back, at the city that had sheltered her, at everything she had known. And at that moment, without a single word of warning, she transformed before her family's eyes. Her body began to harden, her eyes fixed on the horizon, and before Lot could react, she was turned into a pillar of salt. Lot cried out in despair, "No, no, do not look back! Let's go, let's go!" But it was too late. Lot's wife was condemned, transformed into an eternal reminder of those who could not leave the past behind, of those who did not obey God's word. Her motionless figure became a symbol of warning for future generations, that disobedience and attachment to the past can lead to ruin. The angel shouted, "Run! There is no more time!" Lot fled with his daughters. Behind them, Sodom collapsed. The ground split apart. Flames rose to the heavens like columns of judgment, screams, fire. The sky seemed to open with supernatural fury, and Sodom was erased from history forever. But the pain still followed them. The woman became salt. The city became ashes, and Lot became a memory. But what about today? Was Sodom really erased from history, or are we living in new Sodoms, with parties that mock God, children being taught to ignore what is right, lives surrendered to pleasure, violence, and perversion? Do you think all of this is normal? At that time, judgment fell with fire. Today, maybe judgment is only waiting for the same story to repeat itself. What do you think? Comment below with your opinion and let's talk about it. I will stop here and may God bless you.